Hey, everybody. Welcome to the official Do Good Better podcast. I'm your host, Patrick Kirby. And of course, we are here to help the small and medium-sized nonprofits doing great, giant, big things. So I grab guests who I just sort of bond with on a level that I kind of know are going to help you. And I found a great one today. And actually, we met on the interwebs. And then I was so lucky to be a part of a summit and a conference that she put on. And I liked her so much that I'm going to bring her on the podcast because I think she's brilliant and I think she's got some wonderful things to say. The topic today is board of directors and how we can engage them a little better. I would like to welcome to the official Do Good Better podcast, Sabrina Walker Hernandez. She is the founder of Supporting World Hope, which is a consulting firm helping nonprofits all over the place. Sabrina, welcome to the show. Thanks for being a guest.
Thank you. Thank you. You know, I'm looking at your wall and it says, "You got this." And so I'm like, yes, it's speaking to me. I got this. So I'm so happy to be here this morning.
I've been a fan for a long time, and I sort of strategically stalk you on Facebook and all the fun things that you post about the nonprofit world. And I'm super excited to have you as a guest because you we're going to talk about something today that I think a lot of nonprofits are not super comfortable with, which is assigning roles to boards and then using their skill sets to enhance their fundraising. That doesn't only mean them writing a check. And I think that's very confusing to the nonprofit worlds because they've got so many other things to do. So we're going to lay it out in very sort of nice and easy for everybody to understand. But first, and before we get started with that, people are scrolling on Facebook, they're scrolling on their iTunes, they see Sabrina Walker Hernandez, they see Supporting World Hope, they want to learn a little bit more, they don't know much about you. So from a 5,000-foot view, why don't you give the audience kind of who you are, what you do, what's your background, and how you got to where you are now?
Well, I started out in the nonprofit world some years ago, about 25 years ago. I fell in love with, I guess, all my life kind of, because my mom was in the world through church, and we grew up serving, and so it's been a part of my fabric forever. And at some rate, somehow, all of my siblings are in the service industry. We all do like community events, or my sister owns a daycare. She's always doing something. And I fell into the nonprofit world and I absolutely love it. In 2018, I actually got diagnosed with 2 cancers. I didn't know you could get 2 cancers at one time.
Aren't you special?
I know, that's exactly what they said. I am special. The 2 cancers that I got diagnosed with, actually only 1% of the population gets it at the same time. So I got lymphoma and multiple myeloma at the same time. And, you know, when you get cancer, you start kind of looking at like what's going on. You look at your diet, you look at all these things. And one of the contributing factors was stress. And, you know, it's kind of stressful running a nonprofit. You are ultimately responsible, right? And so as I was in the hospital, going through, I think it was like my 3rd chemo, which was my hardest chemo ever. It was just hard. My husband's like, you need to retire. You need to retire. And so I was kind of weak and I was like, fine, I'll retire. And as soon as I said it, I knew it was the wrong answer because I absolutely love nonprofit work. I love getting up in the morning and knowing that what we are doing makes a difference in the world. You don't see it immediately, you know, because mine was, I work with youth services. So youth are never going to come and say thank you, right? But when you've been in it for 25 years and you start to see their kids come through, you know, you start to see that second generation, and you do start to see adults come back and say, hey, you made an impact on my life. There's nothing better than that feeling. I can't describe that feeling for people who haven't experienced it, to know that you've impacted someone's life and they acknowledge that. And so it's a great feeling. It's a very selfish feeling. And I did not want to lose that feeling. And so as I sat there, a couple of months later, I was going through my stem cell transplant, and I was like, I know what I'm going to do. I am going to start a consulting firm that's going to help small nonprofits. And really what I really focus on, for me, a small nonprofit is start up to $4 million is the way I equate small nonprofit in my head. I wanted to help those small CEOs, those founders who are struggling because they feel like they're alone and they have to research and create all these documents and do all these things. And I'm like, I have 25 years worth of documents. I know how to start an endowment. I know how to do a resolution to start an endowment. I know how to do a board job description. I know how to do a board packet. I have all of that. And so that was really the impetus for starting my company, is to support those small nonprofit startups so that they don't have to research as much. They have someone that they can call on and not feel alone. And I have a free VIP resource library on my website. Or, access it, your board packet is done. All you have to do is change out the logo. I do live coaching, free live coaching once a week. So it really is about letting them know that they're not alone. You are not alone. There are so many people, so many resources, much like yourself, Patrick, that are out there that are willing to help. When you're in the trenches, it is hard to come up and breathe to know that those resources are there. And I just remember being in the trenches and not being aware of, I'm going to say this, not being aware of nonprofit podcasts.
Yeah.
Not being aware of all the other resources that are out there because you're so busy in it that you don't come up for breath.
It's so funny that I find I drag executives or fundraisers kicking and screaming out of the mud because they're so worried about what they're going to miss with the simple conversation about why they're in the muck in the first place. And I was like, no, that's half the problem, is that you're scrambling and putting out fires every single day rather than taking a breath and looking at what the big picture is that you've actually accomplished for your organization. But number two, you're not the only one. And I feel like everybody seems like the one thing that is just everybody has as common is, I think I'm the only one having these issues. I have to be, because everybody else seems to be doing fine. Thanks, social media, for assuming that everybody's just doing great, right? And it's just grabbing their hand and yanking them out and saying, listen, everybody's going through the same BS. You got to walk yourself back off of the cliff. And then here's kind of how you reset and get yourself on solid ground again. And it's amazing how that just helps. That alone just helps. Just the clarity that you are not the lone voice of
out there. You're not unique. Everybody thinks that their issue is unique, and it's like, no, your issue is not unique. Your community, they go, but you don't understand my community. No, your community is not unique. Everybody is going through this. You just have to come, like you say, you just have to get up out of the mud. You're sinking, and you have to grab the hand that's reaching out to you. Look at the big picture. Look at the clarity. And stop putting out fires. But it's very hard to do because we get comfortable putting out fires. It kind of equates to productivity, and it's not really productive to move your organization forward. But you feel productive because you're constantly in motion. But where are you going? And if you're not strategic and have a plan around that, then you're kind of just treading water. You're in a quicksand and you're just treading. And you don't realize that. So
I think one of the advantages that you have too, and I love this, just having so many years in the field, right? So it's not like you've been, 18 months in and going, I got this. This is pretty easy. I mean, you've seen it all. And I think that's, again, part of the advantage of sort of us having conversations is that enlightenment takes so long, and that people don't understand how 25 years is like 15 lifetimes within a nonprofit industry. I mean, you've spent 15 full lifetimes within the nonprofit world. That is an enormous amount of information. And I think that's refreshing to a lot of people, knowing that, okay, well, this is clearly this is the way that this is, and really gauging the temperature of nonprofit organizations. And I love that you're the small medium size. I would consider medium up to $4 million. That's the type of organization that is doing the best work, the most work, boots on the ground. They're the heavy lifters. They're not, overcome with bureaucracy. They're not so large they can't tweak or move or take suggestions well. And they've got the biggest upside as far as I'm concerned. And they get the least amount of support. because their voices aren't as loud as they could be.
Exactly, exactly. And so who needs the support? They need the support. And that is what I'm about. And I think a lot of times when I ask them what are the challenges, a lot of them focus in on fundraising. That's what 99% of the time is fundraising is their answer. But I think that a lot of times it's more around the board, the board of directors, because I feel like if you get your board of directors right, then the fundraising will come. But you got to get yourself a good foundation, especially with a lot of the startup nonprofits. What I realize is they, when you're starting out, you're doing your paperwork and you think, okay, well, let me put my brother, my sister, my cousin, on my board. And then they realize, oh, they're not going to help me the way that I need to be helped, or they realize that they don't have the skill set. And I call it the Bubba theory. You put any old Bubba on the board and, and that's what you got. You got a board full of Bubbas who don't know what they're doing and they're just there. And then you just feel like, then you get frustrated because you're like, well, no one's helping me. No one believes in the vision like I do. And that's just not the case. You have to be very strategic about who you put on your board. I think even from the beginning, and I can understand, and I'm really pragmatic. So I can understand that you want to get your 501c3, and so you assign names, right? So you can submit it to the IRS. But at some point, you need to step back and say, okay, I need a board that maybe is not related to me, that has some skill set that they can bring to the table, because it's really about the circle or the sphere of influence and how do I expand my influence. So if you have the same people in your circle on your board, then you're not really expanding anything. You're not expanding beyond your circle. And so you need to be very strategic about who you're bringing in so that your nonprofit footprint is getting bigger, right? And you need to also look at what skills set that you need. And you need to look at what gaps that you have. And I think a lot of things is just, it goes back to like you got this, stepping outside of your comfort zone, because if you are a founder of a nonprofit organization, or you just got called into a nonprofit organization, you are going to have to step outside of your comfort zone. You're going to have to engage with people that maybe you potentially would not have engaged with prior to, but you do have to step outside of your comfort zone. And I think a lot of people get intimidated by that process. It's so much easier to stay within your lane than it is to kind of expand outside of your lane. And so just, you got this. I love that.
You're so right. And here's the funny part is, ironically, starting your own nonprofit is outside of the box. You don't have to do that. There's no one pointing a gun at your head and saying, you need to start a nonprofit right now. You don't. So already the audacity of starting one has already indicated to me that you have the abilities to go and step outside of your box and do some of those things, or grab roles within your needs, or the best needs. So I love that. And again, how do you get more people to know about your organization? Talk to people outside of your circle and tell that story 1.5 billion times, because then people are going to get interested. It's a numbers game at the beginning. And so if you can find somebody out of your initial sphere who has the same sort of belief structure that you do, right? Understands that you're filling a need, you have a role, this person has a part to play, they find passion in it, all of a sudden you're aligning somebody with your organization. That's aligning somebody that makes them feel good. I love what you said about that it's a selfish feeling, or it's a little bit selfish to get that feeling to make a connection or do good or give money or whatever it is. This is the only acceptable selfishness that you should be able to do, right? It's okay to be selfish in this, because we're programmed to feel great about doing good. And so when you are looking and seeking out board members, you want to give them that feeling too, or the opportunity to get that feeling. That's what you're selling. You're not selling a thing or an object. You're selling a feeling of doing amazing things within the community. What
Yeah,
a
you're
great
aligning
gift.
their value, their values. Their values align up. You're making them feel good. You know, there's
Mhm.
some research out there that says if you get people who give and give back live longer. So you're giving them
Yeah.
an opportunity to live longer, to feel good, to really to give back. And it's not, serving on the board is a privilege. I think that a lot of times when people talk about serving on the board, you can hear it in their voice. Sometimes it's like a begrudging thing, like, oh, I'm serving on this board and
Yeah.
they're always asking for stuff or
Yes.
they're doing this. But it really is a privilege. And we need to go into it with that mentality,
Yeah.
working with me in my passion project, in my nonprofit, in what I am doing and trying to change the world. It is a privilege because you're
Mhm.
impacting people
Yeah.
and come in it in such a way. But I think also that the it is the role of the CEO or the founder to have that mentality as well. If they come into it with a mindset of scarcity, then that is going to pervade throughout the organization.
Mhm.
And so they have to come in knowing their value of their service. They have to come in with the mindset of, I'm here to solve a problem. I'm here to help the community. And you are being invited along on this. And it's a privilege to be invited along
Mhm.
to solve this problem. It is not a scarcity mindset. Well, I'm going to take this person because we need board members and that's it. I got to have board members. So I'm going to take this person. No, you need to vet. It needs to be selective. It needs to be a person that aligns with your values. It needs to be a person that aligns with the organization mission. They have to be passionate about the mission. They have to want to give back. They have to have a skill set. Now, having said all that, I have been there where you're like, ooh, this slot has been empty for a while. Like, what do I do? What do I do? I can tell you, I've made mistakes by jumping too fast. If you jump too fast, you can make a mistake and put the wrong person on the board.
Mhm.
And that could be a bad thing and that can set you back. And so there is something to be said about patience, and there's something to be said about having a standard and knowing what that standard is and putting that standard out there and waiting for the right person to come along.
Mhm. Mhm.
And especially when you have uh, you don't want to start creating a right team and then bring someone in that's going to drag down that team. And so just kind of be very careful about that. But once you do get your team in place, I think it is up to the executive to make sure that everybody is kind of like playing the right roles. And I think that's where CEOs and founders get frustrated because they think, okay, now I have the right team. Now they're supposed to know what they're supposed to do.
Mhm.
And that's not the case either, right? Because what happens is, and I don't know, Patrick, maybe you have some insight into this. What I do notice is that you can get these bright, bankers and business people to come on your board, and somehow they check their business hat at the nonprofit door. And it's like, no, no, no. A nonprofit is a business too. We need that skill set. That's why you're
Yeah.
here.
Mhm.
But they do tend to check their business hat sometimes at the door. It's a little frustrating.
You know,
I don't know if you have an opinion on that.
yeah, it's interesting because I think that's, and I think you even hinted at it at the beginning, which is those initial conversations you have with board members are so unbelievably critical. And I think it's a lack of training that executive directors have is what is the expectations out of the gate for these individuals? And they don't have those conversations about keeping their business hat on during the business of the board. And I think we think of it as an extracurricular activity rather than a purposeful and meaningful piece to our life puzzle. Because for example, my kids will play baseball, right? They're not in school. The school is business to them, right? They get into baseball. It's a fun activity. It's a thing that they go to. They have fun, have a snack afterwards. They get to talk about how they played with whatever sports, and then they come back and they start their business day over going back to school. I think it might be very similar as an activity that the board finds because it's just something you put on your resume and it's something that's fun to do and it makes me feel really good, but I don't want to work that hard. I think what you brilliantly do is align people's sort of board roles, and so they enhance their skill sets. Therefore, it's not work. It's actually pleasurable in a way that's not bottom line driven from a business standpoint, but it is sort of that do-gooding, sort of feel good bottom line, but using your skill sets. So you hinted at that from a sort of a roles, because I think a lot of executive directors also think the only reason for a board to exist is to say that I'm doing great things and they got to help me fundraise.
Right.
That's it.
Yeah, and that's it. And fundraising is a dirty F word. As I call that, I call fundraising a dirty F word.
Yep.
Yes, I'm going to be very clear. I think the board role is to assist with fundraising. Because I have to say that very clearly, because there are some boards out there that don't think that that's their role.
Yeah.
And so I have to say that emphatically. Board role is to assist with fundraising. However, I feel that there are many ways to assist with fundraising. And when we say fundraising, people automatically go to, they have to ask for money. I don't feel like that is the case.
No.
I feel that, and in my experience, there are many roles that board members can play in the fundraising process. So I will give you this. There are those that are door openers, and those are the people who really, they know people. They're willing to lend their credibility in the community to your organization. They will open up the door for a sit-down meeting. One of my best board members ever, who raised the most money, came to me and said, I will never ask for money. I mean, she was very clear.
Yeah.
I would never ask for money.
Sure.
I don't feel comfortable. I will not do it. I had a choice right then and there to say, okay, well, maybe you're not for this board then. But I had a conversation. What are you willing to do? I'm willing to introduce you to anyone. I can set up any meetings that you want me to have. I can get you in the door. And she was my door opener. And from her relationship, it's really funny. From her relationship, I got to fly on a private jet to see a foundation, because she introduced me to the bank president, who had a plane, who flew me on to a foundation board. The bank that she introduced us to, we became their nonprofit of choice. Several of their bank presidents traditionally have served on our board, and this is all because of her role as a door opener. And we couldn't have gotten that any other way. And so door openers are very critical, very critical. Cultivators, those board members that are willing to invite people on tours, those board members that are willing to get in there and do those hands-on service projects and bring other people along with them. Those board members that are willing to take people out for coffee and have conversations and have those discovery conversations with potential donors. Those are all critical. And of course, you have your askers, people that are willing to ask for money. I had a board of 21 people. Out of 21 people, I had 3 askers. Don't panic if you only have 3 askers. It only takes a few. It really does only take a few. As long as you have a few that are passionate and you practice. I can't say enough. Practice objections. Practice what you would say if the donor said this. Practice, make them feel as comfortable as possible, because they are few and limited. Okay, let's just be honest, they are few and limited. And then you have the people that are thankers. I think the thankers are the most underutilized and unappreciated of them all. I have given, in the last couple of months, I've given to 7 nonprofits. And I've had one who really did an outstanding thank you. They actually delivered something to my house. They did a handwritten card, but the others, I didn't even get a automatic response thank you. We are horrible at the thank you. You would think in our industry would be so much better because we're the feel good people, but we're horrible at the thank you. So that board member who would be your thanker, who would pick up the phone and call that donor and make them feel special, that says, you gave to our organization. I want to thank you so much for that. That's going to make a huge difference. That's going to make a huge difference in your retention. That's going to make a huge difference in reoccurring donors.
Mm-hmm.
It's just going to make a huge difference. So don't undervalue the person who's doing a thank you. The building of the relationship and it doesn't stop with get the money. It continues on beyond that, because you don't want to leave money on the table. You want a reoccurring gift. You want to move them up that infamous ladder to legacy gift.
Yeah.
And the only way you're going to do that is if you have that thanking and that process in place. So there's many roles that board members can play.
It's brilliant. And I think this is, I think it's so needed to say, especially kind of as we're coming to the end of the year, right? You're revamping everything for 2021. And it's like, all right, this is going to be a different year, less Rona, more asking, whatever. I don't think we need to talk about the board member who makes asks. You find one of those unicorns, you ride that pony till she bucks you, because she's going to be fine. That person's going to be A-okay. I'm intrigued on having a longer discussion on the door openers and the thank you board members. So let's walk through the door openers. And I'm going to put door openers and cultivators in the same one for the purpose of our conversation, because I think it's really interesting what you said, is that your biggest and best fundraiser was not an asker. She was a door opener. And there is probably more value and more money in a great door opener, someone who other people trust at their word that your organization is amazing, than somebody who you would pigeonhole or force into an asking role. So let's just walk through the scenario. The bank president that flew you out on the private jet, lucky you. That's one of my life goals I never actually accomplished within that.
It was amazing. It was amazing. There's a story behind that, Patrick. I went from cleaning toilets that morning to flying on a private jet that afternoon, because that's what we do as nonprofit executives. But it was amazing. That's
a really Drake song right there. That's right. That is immediately. But if that person asked the individual bank president for a gift, and let's just say it was a really healthy gift, that gift would be smaller than what you got out of from the long-term play of asking them to open the door for you. Am I safe to assume that?
Oh, yes, you are very much safe to assume that, because it's been a relationship that has lasted over the years, years of time. And so, it started out as the introduction, and that board president actually became the chair for our capital campaign. Okay. We did a $12 million comprehensive capital campaign.
$12 million. Yep.
$12 million capital campaign. They flew us to the Maybe Foundation in Oklahoma. We got a $250,000 gift there.
$250,000. Yep.
Yep. And then they place, we are an organization that they place board members from their bank onto our board. And so each of our board members, we have a give or get policy. And so they raise money. So they have three people serve on our board of directors, who each are responsible for raising $5,000 each year. And then they, and then the marketing alone. We celebrate like after school. It was after school program, so it's like after school week. And so all the tailors would wear our buttons that said, join the after school program. And so the marketing, not only the dollars, but the marketing, and to be able to expand that relationship. And this is a person who did not ask for money, just lended her credibility to us and opened the door, because he trusted her, and that trust transferred to us.
And I think that's the conversation that you need to have with your potential your board members, is that exact story. Because what gets me every time is that, well, this be all end all of what I do is make an ask for 50 grand, when that could be 10 times the amount, based on door opening and sort of leading other people to understand what your organization does, have them fall in love with it, and then they become your biggest champions. We talk about it every single week on this show, which is third-party endorsement is exponentially better than first-party solicitation every single time. Having people who are dedicated to your cause, who have no stake in the game other than they love you, are so much more valuable than you going out and trying to bang on every single door and asking for money, because you can't do it all. That's why you have a board in the first place. You have them to sort of help you do the things you do. So let them, and by giving them the chance to use their skill sets as somebody who's a door opener or a cultivator is such an important piece to hammer home all the time. And what a value that brings to your organization for the long haul.
You know, it is for the long haul. And, you know, that board member served on our board for quite a while. Actually, this year is for last year, but the relationship that she established with that institution will continue on beyond her tenure.
Yep.
You know, it's you think of that particular you think of that business, you think of the organization.
Yeah.
That's how aligned it really is. And it's transferred the relationship from the board, and that's what you want to do. You know, when I retired, one of the things that I was concerned about was the transfer of the relationship. You know, I wanted to make sure that the relationship was with the organization and not Sabrina as the CEO or Millie as that board member. You have to make sure that when you leave, the relationship is still with the organization. You don't want that to go away because that person went away. And so it's very critical that, you know, you still do all the pieces. Once they introduce, you still have to do all the pieces of building relationships with that bank president or with that person, because you want that relationship with that person and the organization, not the individuals. And so you still do your thing. You still send your newsletters. You still send your gifts. You still send the impact stories. You still make it about the organization as much as you can, over and over and over and over again, because they will become endeared to the organization, and that's what you want. You want it to be about the organization.
And one of the best reinforcing pieces to that is appreciation. And I know that we talked about that just briefly, but I'd love to dive in as somebody who's on the board to be dedicated to showing appreciation and thanking not only donors, I think, because I think that's where people get into this limiting belief system that you only appreciate those who give you money. No, it's appreciating those who have either a connection to your organization, a connection to your community, a connection to a gift, a connection to a program, a connection to a family, whatever the case may be. There's no limit to the amount of gratitude that you can give. And if you have somebody or a handful of people on your board who are dedicated to showing that appreciation, what a great gift to give your organization to help you with the heavy load of reaching out to more individuals and saying, thanks.
Thank you. And it sets you apart. It really does set your organization apart. You know, and you start to think, why am I doing this? Does anybody really notice? You know, but they do. I've had conversations with people who said, you know, your organization is the only one where I know that if I do something that I'm going to get a phone call.
Yep.
And it makes a difference. To us, it becomes routine and mundane, but to them, it really does make a huge difference. And it's giving your board members a particular role. Because like I said, I've given to 7 organizations and have only received one thank you. And it's not right, because I think it's a mentality thing. We have to examine that. I don't know, as a nonprofit industry, we have to examine it. People are not obligated to give to us because we are a nonprofit. No. And I think sometimes people go into it with that mindset. Well, now I have my 501c3. I'm a nonprofit, so you have to give to me. No, I don't have to give to you. There's still options. And when I do give, yes, my expectation is to have a thank you. It is not giving to receive a thank you, but it's manners at the same time. You know, I have a choice about where I put my hard-earned dollars. And so I would appreciate a simple thank you, even if it's just a simple thank you, but not to receive anything, I think is in poor taste.
You know, it's funny that, and I'm sure you talk about this all the time the way that I do, which is I'm trying to hammer into organizations to send thank you notes all the time. It feels like everybody knows this, and yet
they don't.
Not many do. And I am so confounded by that. Is it time? Is it like you said, is it being mundane? Is it that they don't think they need to, or that they don't have the ability to do so? What is it that they know? Because you bring it up in conversation, like, I know, I got to do that. I go, I know, you know. It's like talking to one of my kids. You know, you have to like pick up after yourself. I know, but do you really? Because you don't seem to be doing this. And I feel like I'm a broken record sometimes. I don't know how you feel like this. I feel like I'm a broken record talking to nonprofit organizations about reaching out and saying thanks with as simple as a 2-sentence thank you card. That seems to be the major issue. We always had best practices at the last nonprofit that I used to work at, which at the end of each board meeting, we would hand them 20 thank you notes or 15 thank you notes. And they, before they left that board meeting, had to write out those thank you notes to donors and potential supporters across the way. They didn't know how much, they didn't know anything. They just had to write them, and we had pre-stuffed envelopes. You just put them in there and then we mail them at every board meeting. And they thought it was mundane. And yet we saw the numbers soar based on recurring gifts because they got something in the mail. I am shocked that 6 out of the 7 have not sent you a thank you note. That blows my freaking mind.
Have not. And I think that you know, we all know, send the thank you within 48 hours. That's like the golden rule.
Sure.
But there's some practical things. I think that people get so caught. It's about putting out fires. They'll rather put out the fires than to sit and do the thank you notes. Well, I didn't have time to do thank you notes because this came up or this came up and this. Well, actually taking the time to write the thank you note is going to get you to your fundraising goal quicker than putting out the fire.
Yes.
But there are some quick tips, you know, that we learn as we go. Just like you said, you had your board members write thank you notes. Make that a intentional part of your board meeting. Also, you can change who says thank you. So for me, it was a little bit easier, I will admit, because I work with youth. And so, you know, they do arts and crafts all the time. And so I would have them already make arts and crafts cards that said thank you. And so when the donation come in, I would just stuff the envelope and sign my name with the kid, you know, saying thank you and send it off. But you have to kind of be creative and intentional like that. How can you streamline this? There's nothing wrong with streamlining the process. Nothing at all wrong with that. Nobody's gonna get up and roar, you know, because you streamline the process. But you do have to be intentional about the process and have a process. When you don't have a process and you're putting out fires, it's Monday and you got gifts in the mail, Thanksgiving gifts over the holiday, right? And you open up the mail and today's Monday, you start putting out fires, and tomorrow's Tuesday, and before you know it's Friday, then it's Christmas, and nobody's received a thank you. And then you're like, ooh, is it too late now to send a thank you? And then you're like, well, yeah, it is too late. And then they're gonna remember, I never received a thank you. And that's what you don't want to be remembered for. I would rather, you know, send something, even if you can't send something, pick up the phone. Picking up the phone doesn't cost you anything, right? It doesn't cost you anything. Pick up the phone. You know, with my board members, my thankers, you know, I would just send them a quick email. Such and such just gave, here's their cell phone number. And then they would just pick up the phone and call them and say, you know, I'm a board member with whatever organization, and you just gave, and I just wanted to say thank you. Couldn't do without you.
I'm gonna call you the next time I need to ram this down somebody's brain, because you and I speak the same language and you have the same fire in your belly the same way I do about this exact same subject. And it's a wonderful reminder that not all your board members need to be fundraising askers, but opening doors and having them as thank you pieces is so absolutely critical. Sabrina, this has been delightful. You are a delight in the first place, and then this conversation has been wonderful as well. There's people out there who are probably going to want to get a hold of you, or at least know a little bit more about you. How do they get a hold of a Sabrina Walker Hernandez and Supporting World Hope?
And do you know the SWH, Supporting World Hope, Sabrina Walker Hernandez? Did you make the connection?
Nope, now I did. That's ridiculous. I find myself trying to be intuitive enough, and I didn't make that connection. You're brilliant.
It's okay. No, you can find me everywhere at Supporting World Hope. That's on YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn, Pinterest. The only place that I'm not supporting World Hope is on Instagram. On Instagram, I'm _nonprofit expert. I'm still learning Instagram. Ice Patrick, I see you up there a lot. I'm still, I'm not that cool parent. I'm still learning Instagram. So
I may have hired someone to help me with that one, because I am not as cool as one thinks I am on Instagram, which states, surprise, just a dad. We're going to make sure that all of those are in the show notes, because I think you got to check her out. She's amazing. Awesome trainings all the time. You pop up on Facebook all the time, kind of giving great advice and talking with experts all over the place. Sabrina, thank you so much for being a guest on the official Do Good Better podcast. I am a better human being because I know you, and I appreciate you being on the show with me today.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. And the last thing I'm going to say to people is just what is resonating with me as I sit here is, you got this.
Yeah, you got this. It's in you're watching this. You got this. Well, we'll talk to you soon. I'm sure this warrants another 2, 4, 5, 17 different conversations. You're the best, Sabrina. Have a wonderful rest of your day. Thanks for stopping by on the official Do Good Better podcast.